I'm just going to measure off 6 separate value scales, 1 inch high and 9 inches long. And I'm going to leave a little bit of space between each one of them to make sure that they're accurately laid out 1 inch high. I'm going to leave a 1/2 inch space in between them for any wording that I want to add to it, for like instructions or details and things like that. So let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have one more to do. And I like to measure my stuff out that way there's no mistake in them. So what I use, I'll tick them off with my ruler, and then I go down and I draw out the length. Very light. I don't use a lot of pressure, because if I, decide to erase any lines anywhere throughout this process, I won't be struggling to get rid of them, because I've done them lightly. Then I can erase them. Erase them with my white eraser. I don't use the pink eraser because it leaves marks. It could leave those pink marks on your page if you put too much pressure down when you're erasing. And I don't want that. You don't want those deformations on your page. Like right now I'm doing it on Bristol board. You can do the same thing on Bristol board or in a sketchbook. And we're doing these value scales to help show visually how you can get depth and texture. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, in your scales. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take one of use this, and I'm going to give myself some space in the beginning from the edge. I'm just going to mark off a 1/2 inch. Then I'm just going to go on from there, move my ruler back to 0, and I'm just going to mark off 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch. And see, I try to use that line coming from the number. That's the inch itself, not the 1/4 inches or the 1/16 or 32nds of an inch or the 1/8 of an inch. So I'm going to have 9 squares altogether. And this basically, once I do this, this is going to mark off my scales, and I use those inches along with my T-square to line them up so that I don't have to do that for every single one of them again. Then I just go up the line and just mark off each section. I don't want to put down a lot of pressure. Boom. So I go to the next one. I'll line up to that dot. So to make sure. I always start the lines with the dot that the mark that I make. So even though I've made the mark on the second row, I don't start on the first row, I start right there. So then I go up again to the next one. And then mark off. To give me that square that I want. And what I'm gonna do now also, so I don't get too far gone, my initial mark for that first square, I go and take those lines out. So that now I have my space at the beginning too. I don't want to run your scale flush to the edge like a bleed. like if you're doing a magazine ad or something like that. You don't want to bleed it off to the edge. And clean up, and that's why we draw light, so you can have a nice space. Now, I have the space in the front, or the space between. I'm just going to continue marking my lines off. Yeah. Oops, my root. It moved a little bit. You be careful, don't make that mistake that I just made. Anything I go outside, I go back and clean up anyway, so. Always clean up your stuff before you start. Sometimes the setup takes a little bit. I'm going a little bit fast and making these extra marks that I'm gonna have to clean up. And I'm doing them because that's what I normally do. I'm not trying to be Mr. Perfect on these, because I want to show that even me, myself, I can go outside. But the thing is to go back and clean up your work. That's the important thing. Even if you make those marks and mistakes like that, you should always go back and clean up your work. Because I don't know what most people have heard over the years, but I'm gonna say it because I highly believe it, and I know from experience also that presentation is everything. You can't just do your work and just, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, boom. You can't just do your work and then expect to get high marks on assignments and things like that when you don't go back and clean up your work. You need to clean up your work. It's a must. Presentation is everything. Because that helps your final outcome. You want to, if you got to go back in, like me, I just took a little bit too much off of there, but I'll go back in and erase and then put back things that should still be there. I don't want to. And because these are value scales, it's not going to really hurt it too much by taking, you want to do all this stuff in the beginning before you start actually putting in your value, because you don't want to go back and try to have to get that little bit off, because it happens when you go back and clean up, even during your scale, and we're doing this in graphite, so your eraser marks show up, because if you take off too much when you go back in to clean up, it's going to show in your work. You're going to have these missing pieces. Now, for me, the quickest thing for me to do, like little teeny pieces like this, is like that line's a little bit off. So I just come back in here and put my line back. Put that line back. That line's missing right there. Got a little bit too much with took too much off of my eraser, but it's not bad. One more spot. Okay, oh, there's another one right there. And as you can see, once I go back and look at it, okay, now I'm ready to actually start putting in my value. Except for over the end, I forgot to take this out. I don't want them connected. And in this case, for me, I'm probably going to leave these other lines here, because I can actually, because there. I can actually put some writing on top of them if I decide to write some stuff. I might want to put some extra lines in there so I can write some more stuff, but I just don't want them connected. That's the main thing. I don't want them connected right here. So I'm going to take all of that out and just give me a gutter space between my scales and anything I want to write on these lines on the side. All right, so the first scale, I'm going to label these because I think it's important to show. So the first one I'm going to do is I'm going to put in, because most people know shading, hatching, cross hatching, stuff like that. So I'm going to label them across the top in a nice little handwritten script. So I'm just going to write shading. I usually like to do it at the bottom though. I'm going to put shading, I'm going to put that one at the top. The next one, I'm going to put hatching. Then I'm going to put cross hatching. It's important to label them so you won't mess around and put the wrong technique in the wrong scale. So here I'm going to go stippling. Circularism. And I'm going to put scribbling here. Okay. So fix my G's, so like a G. All right, so these are the 6 scales I use to create value. So always in the first box, because you're doing a scale from light to dark. Don't mix them up and go dark to light, just go light to dark. I want to show a gradation of value from your lightest square to your darkest square. So on your first square, on each one of them, you're gonna leave this completely blank. I don't want to see any marks inside this square at all. All right, so your value is actually going to start in this next one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Okay, so I'm zoomed in now, so this first box stays empty. And what you want to do is for the next box, you put just a light amount of value in that box, because you might have to go back and adjust by the time you get to the end, but you're going to add in a light amount. So what I suggest is I don't suggest you use your tip, because you're going to leave lines in your paper. So if I was to do it like this, I would have to go like super light, but you can see it's going to be like really scratchy lines, and then you have to come in and you can blend and smooth it out, but it's not the same effect as if you turned it on that side. You can get some really light values, but when you blend it, it's going to come out smoother that way. So I use my hand sometimes. Other times I use other things like paper towel, or like a paper towel like this or like this. You can use napkins. I have a tendency to use my hands a lot, but I get used to it, and then I can clean up a lot. So I wouldn't suggest, if you're new, to do that. It's like I've been doing it for a long time. So one of the things is, once I first sharpen the pencil, you have a lot of graphite on it, so you want to kind of wipe it off and start fresh, because you want to make sure it's nice and even. So what I usually do is I start from the corner and I work my way out. to lay down a good amount of value. Now the paper I'm actually working on, it has a little bit of texture, like a little tooth on it. So it's gonna pick up and you'll be seeing some of the texture. And I try to go to the edge as much as possible and shade in. As much as I can without going over the line. You don't want to, it doesn't matter as much as if you go over the line here, because you're going to go darker here, but you want to be real careful about going over the line on this side. So I take my time. You want to get that out the way. And then by doing it like this, you can actually go back over some sections if you feel like that is a little darker, like here, than it is here. I can always go over this section a little bit more, just to pull a little bit more value out. Now right now, I'm using just a basic number 2 pencil. If I see a little bit in there, then I go and I clean it out. I'm using the basic number 2 pencil here. And then when I decide I'm gonna go ahead and start blending some of this, I get me a piece of paper towel or napkin, and I can smooth some of this out and get a better value blend from corner to corner. Now, before I move on, I'll go back. Anything that comes outside that square, I clean up as I go. So I just want to make sure that all my students know that I'm always looking for cleanliness, because smudges along your work doesn't present well. Okay. So the next, again, I go to the next square, and I can always go back and still adjust, but I go to the next square. I want to add a little bit more value than the square previous. I'm not going to go too dark too fast, because even with this, I can still blend it out, because I still have a long way to go with the rest of these. So I don't want to go too dark, too fast. And sometimes I rotate my pencil. I'll twist it and rotate it around to make sure I can get value. Oops, I'm a little dark there. So before I even blend, if I feel like I've gone too dark, I'll take some of it out really, very lightly. And then do the same. And I go to blend. I'm looking at this darker value. I have a few light spots. So I'm going to come in here. Just going to touch it just a little bit around those light spots. Then I'm going to blend that in there. I want to get the best possible value I can out of that. I'm seeing a little bit of light, like right there. I don't like that little bit of light. Okay, so now, again, I come in here and I clean up. It makes for better presentation. And as you can see, once you take that little bit out, it makes a difference in how it looks. So I'm gonna do the same thing and finish this out, then I'll come back. Okay, I'm back, and I'm in the process of cleaning up my mess now. So you can see, even with this dark graphite, I can get rid of this and clean up my work. So I'm gonna probably get more, oops, on here when I brush, but just give you an idea. And then what I also do is come in here and I can lay down an angle or something that helps me with my straight edge. And once I get the edge lined up straight, I just use my eraser and come across it like that. To clean up my work. Which helps in your presentation. And I'll do the other side as well. And lay it down along my guidelines. Add a little pressure, and then start erasing. And that's why you leave that space between. Don't put your scales lined up side by side, close, so you can't see the edge. And then bam, that's my shaded scale right there. It's graduating from light to dark. And then I use my ebony pencil for the last section. Okay, now that you see that there's no color breaks in the squares, there's no breaks in here, there's no light spots in here, there's no light spots in the corner. There's a blend from white to dark, to the darkest value. Now, there are more values that can be gotten or achieved other than what you see here, but in a non-block 9-inch square scale, this is perfect. So from light to dark, the colors blend. All right. So you're gonna do the same thing with hatching, moving down to the next section. I don't want to see, like I said, I don't want to see a bunch of work out here, like stuff that you didn't clean up. I don't want to see a bunch of light spots in between here, between each brick. I want to see each square fully valued. All right, so hatching, I'm going to do mine at an angle. You can do them vertical. You can do a horizontal. I like to do mine at an angle because most of the time when I draw, those hatch marks are usually at some form of angle. What you don't want to do is start doing your hatching in one direction and then change. You want to keep everything moving in the same direction. All right, so because it's the first one, what you want to do now is start off your first one, and you're going to have no value, nothing in the first one. You're going to start with a few lines in the first one and keep doubling and tripling your lines as you get to the end until you see no light or barely any light coming through, just like in the previous scale of shading. But this one's all hatching. So I'll probably put 1, 2, 3, and I try to keep the spacing similar to even if it gets here. And we'll take this second one, just continue the line over like that, so it looks the same. So what you're gonna do is, we're gonna go in between there, and I'm gonna add an even amount of lines filling in the spaces, so you can see there's no breaks there. It's not started here and then going and then continuing there. They're started at the end and continues out. So just like I did here, I'm going to take these lines, continue them out. So it's the same. And if you make a mistake, just go in and clean it up. Like some of the lines look a little off. I come in here and clean up the ones I just messed up. And I start trying to fix it. I don't want to have a messy scale. And so where I had a break at right there, I go back in and fix the break. I don't want to have breaks in my scale. I can already tell, just looking at it, you can see the value increasing from here to there. Again, I'm going to pause this. Okay, I've completed my scale. As you can see, going from white, getting darker as it goes down, and very little light coming through. And what you do if you see like a light spot, you just go back in there and hit it again and fill in those spots. Let me clean up my end right here. All right. And you can do the same thing for each one of these. I'm just going to do the beginnings so you can see. Same thing. I got 1, 2, 3, 4 here. If I decide to even go 1, 2, 3, 4. Same thing. I will take these lines over into the next section. But I'm going to come back in here. And you can rotate your paper as well. So I like to get my lines right. So if I went in the middle, and added more lines to balance it, so you go from light and it gets darker, and I do the same thing as I did in the previous section. Now I'll show you the completed section when I finish, but I'm gonna start off each of these just to give you an idea. Same thing, stippling. I want to see dots, so I come straight down with dots. I don't want to see gashes. Zoom in so you can see it better. I don't want to see this. This is a no-no. I don't want to see like gashes, because those are basically lines. I want to see dots. That is stippling. I want to see dots, not gashes. This is what I want. This is what I don't want. All right. So coming over here, I'm going to see a few dots scattered around. I don't want to see like heavy on one side too, so I have to put a few and try to balance it. Boom. That's value. The next one, again, I usually, to get the best results if you hold your pencil straight up and down. If you do them to the side, you're going to get those gashes. So you want to see stippling. You want to see more dots in this section than that section. So right now this section has more. So I have to go back in here. I'm gonna have to fill up some spots. Stippling has another name. I learned about it in school early on. It's called Pointillism. So now I actually have more dots here than I have here. And I will do the same thing, add more here, 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 until I get to the end. Circularism. All you're doing, I don't want individual circles like that. That is a no-no. I want circle like you're going in a circle. So come over here, I'll start, and I just, boom. Then I just go to the next section, and I just keep going in a circle. And you'll see I'll have more. Then I take it to the next section, and I just move around so it's not planned out. And if I go outside like that, I just erase that part. But my result is I want to cover, create more value, and you can use this technique for other things as well. So I go to the next section, and this one's pretty quick to do too. So that's why I'm continuing on more so than I did the rest of them. I make smaller circles, bigger circles. The thing is, I'm just going in circles and creating the value, and you see the value. You see the value moving over, like, and increasing. So there you go. You can see it better now that I've like zoomed out a bit. And then you go into this next one. Same thing. I'll just keep on going in circles, big circles, small circles, and you want to hit the corners. That helps you fill up the block. I move around, so don't look organized. I just move around a little bit, just randomly keep going. And the more I do it, the more value I'm creating. As you can see, it's like nice gradual tone. And then as you go along, just like I did in the hatching, as you go along also, your lines tend to get thicker as you go compared to when you started, because my pencil, you know, in the beginning it's nice and thin, but as you use it, you start getting a wider edge tip. So you can actually add more pressure as well to create that create more value as you're adding these lines. The same thing I can do the same thing with circularism, and then also scribble is similar to circularism, but circularism have these nice smooth circles as you go. Scribble, you have circles, but you have like sharp edges as well. So basically, I start off, I can just go random directions, you know. So it's not so uniform. So it's like just letting my pencil create the texture and the value. And I just move on to the next section. And I can just lift my pencil up, just keep going. Just random scribble lines. And the thing is, when you do that though, you can see it creating that value from one square to the next, because I'm adding more and more scribble lines, and I'm adding pressure as I go also per square, not within the same square, because you don't want to do. The scribble lines, just fill it up. So I hit some of the corners, and I look at it. If I need more value, it's like still a little bit close, and just add a little bit more. Then when I go to the next section, do the same thing. Just keep going on and on and on. And right now, this one has more, so I just keep on. Hit some of the corners, fill up some of that value. I try not to go over that line. Now, when I go back and look at it, I have more value going from here to there. So keep practicing. I'll come back and show you the finished piece in a little bit. Okay, I finished most of the other stuff. I'm on the stippling now. So I usually, to keep your paper from getting messed up, to always use a clean sheet to put between your hand and your working area, so you don't get it all messed up. So I started the video back here just so you can see how I work. And this work gets tedious, so I'm trying to come down straight. Every once in a while you might get a little gash, but overall you won't see them. I just didn't want to see anyone do their entire assignment with one, like, just huge gashes. Now right now these here are almost the same. I'm trying to get this one filled out, and then once I get it filled out more, I'll go back in, and every once in a while I go back over here, I see a little empty spots, but I want to fill in some of these white spots here first. This is one of those tedious assignments, so I was going back and forth between the stippling and other techniques to complete this, so that just so you can see how this one comes along, how I create this. So I still have like one block left, so this one here will be kind of close between these with very little light coming through. This one can actually go a little darker, but with the value the way it's going, that's perfect for that. But for this, for the stippling, is the most tedious part of the assignment for value. So I would suggest, you know, if you can't stick with it, then do it all in one shot. You know, do a little bit, work on some of the others, and then come back to it. Now, they look pretty even. So now my job, before I even go here, is to go back over and hit some of the lighter spots, which is going to give me more value and create that next gradation from here to here. So it won't look the same. Once you get both of them, when they're side by side, close to the same, you go to the darker, the next square, which is the darker square, supposed to be the darker square, and add more value. You can already see the change between these two spots right here already. So I go through and just keep pounding away, adding more dots. And I try to do it slow. I don't want to be slamming the pencil down like that. I'll try to do it nice and low with the pencil. Now, you know, some students will probably ask, why not just do it with pen? Well, yeah, you can do it with pen for other techniques, but for this assignment and most of the things we're going to be doing are in graphite. We'll get to pen and ink and brush and ink later. So you can always enhance those skills with what you learn between the gradients. So I'm looking here, you can see the gradual tone now from light, and it gets dark. I start to hit this little spot right here. Then I have to do this other square. And this other one, it's mostly done. So I look at it through the camera. I see a spot here. So I just go in and slow it down. And this is when it goes, you can see the technique more of a stippling. Well, I'll say pointillism because I'm actually pointing to exactly where I want to put these. It's more controlled. That's the difference between what I would call stippling and pointillism, because pointillism is more controlled placement of dots. Basically, I would say stippling plus, to be honest, and more accurate. So I want to get this first row, and I try not to be like too pattern placed, because what I want to do is I want to build up enough value so that you can tell the difference between this side and that side, especially when it comes to being close to this line. And spread around, but I want this right now. It looks pretty smooth coming over, but and you can always go for a darker pencil too, which I'll probably do after I do this. I'll probably grab another pencil. This is a 7B, so I'll probably go to an 8 or a 9B or my ebony pencil to make it even darker if I don't get the desired value that I'm looking for from this one pencil. Usually what I do is use a pencil, you know, that graphite from a pencil, to get as many values as I can before switching pencils. Sometimes I'll switch back and forth too, but the majority of the time, that's even darker. There we go. So now to keep this value all the way across, and then maybe once I finish, I'll add even more just to make it so it looks darker. And see, I'm not like scribbling in and stuff. I'm actually just rotate my pencil to it. So I still want to keep them dots. I don't want to get those gashes. Try to get the least amount of gashes as possible, because I know sometimes you will get 1 or 2 or 3, maybe even 4, but in a spot like this you probably get quite a bit. But looking at them closely, or even if I pull out my magnifying glass just to look at them up close, they will look like dots and not gashes. Someone probably saying, oh my god, did he just say magnifying glass? Oh yeah, I did. Sometimes you stop, stretch the hands so don't get cramped up. Take a sip of water, full of ice, and just keep on going. Slow it down and try to stay inside the line. I want as least light as possible coming out of this last square. Each technique is going to have a different amount of value coming from their final squares because of the different techniques. You want to still be able to see the technique, you know, without totally losing it. So I'm actually hitting a little harder now so I can get darker values as well. And you have to slow it down sometimes to get that control. Don't want to go outside the line, but I can clean it up too if I go too much. Whew. Usually in the class, when you'll do this, you'll hear everybody's pencil going, and the acoustics are remarkably loud. So even looking at that, that's more value, but I see a little light spot, so I'm going to go back over it just a bit. I'm not going to switch pencils. I'm just going to keep using this 7B and just try to knock out as much light as possible to help with that gradient. There you go, that looks a little bit better, but I still see some spots that need some work. And that's kind of what I'm expecting from the class too. Them to just keep going in and do their best, and don't just turn in the easiest and quickest thing just to get a grade. I want you to push yourself. So I look at it like this, and I turn around, I rotate it so I can see this line right here. Because sometimes the way the light hits it, I'm seeing something slightly different. And I'm looking at the value as I rotate around. All right. And I see somewhere I actually went out. So I'm gonna clean up a little bit. All right. And there you have it. Your 6 value scales. Shading, hatching, cross hatching, stippling, circularism, and scribble. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to also place one piece online so you can see what not to do. And this is what I'm looking for. A 9-inch scale, 1 inch high, each square 1 inch by 1 inch. All right.